everybody. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this March monthly meeting of the Emerging Technology Community of Interest. You probably just saw the notification pop up on your screen, as well as the audio message that this meeting is being recorded. So just so that everybody knows, whether you're a speaker or an attendee, the things that are being said here and videoed are being recorded for future use and reference. So that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get started with some opening remarks. I know we have some hard stops among a couple of different speakers that we have in the program today. And we share this and go to present. All right, so again, welcome everybody. I'm really looking forward to hearing how smart cities can work well. So bringing a lot of this emerging technology activity and data together in a way to better serve the public is as we'll hear today, is one of the big goals and objectives of doing smart cities well. So Coral Gables happens to be a leader in this area. Pete Tseronis has graciously brought a couple of guests here today, and he'll introduce them in a few minutes to talk about that project. That being said, some quick opening remarks. We're going to hear from Coral Gables. We're also going to hear a little bit about a tech challenge that is coming up through our Emerging Technology Accelerator group, and then we'll hear working group updates at the end. So just a quick overview for those folks for whom the COI may be new. We focus on all different aspects of emerging technology. We have working groups around blockchain and artificial intelligence, DevOps, and we just recently created a quantum knowledge working group, and we of course have IoT and smart cities, which Pete Tseronis and Mike Berkholtz run along with Sam Navarro. And we'll be hearing from the IoT group today. Every month we hand over the platform to one of the working groups to be able to cover a topic that they are engaging on. So at a high level, this is the makeup of our COI. We're a fairly flat organization. Like, as I mentioned, we have a number of different working groups that each have industry and government chairs that are leading them. We have overarching chairs for the entire COI, and then we have a number of folks that help with the programming and communications, as well as engagement with other COIs and ACT-IAC as a whole. So you can see we do have a couple of vacancies. If anybody's interested, we have a vacancy for an engagement chair as well as a knowledge chair, and you can be either industry or government to fill those. So those roles would really work closely with us at the COI level, but also with the individual working groups and the accelerator to help connect the dots across the program and engaging the community. Some updates on the ACT-IAC event front. Couple events that we wanted to just draw to folks' attention. These are all in-person events that you see listed here coming up in April. There's going to be one on the future of federal work. Do note, though, that that's in Kansas City, but it could be interesting even for those that are not in Kansas City to know that this is something that's being talked about and thought of and engaged on in the community. In April, there's also going to be a climate change summit here in the DC area in Western Virginia. Then something near and dear to everybody's hearts, here in May, there will be an Emerging Technology and Innovation Conference, May 7th through May 9th. That's a really great event. I'll talk about that for about 30 seconds after I drop off this slide. In June, there's a Health Innovation Summit as well in the DC area in Western Virginia. And then sort of the flagship event for the year is Imagination ELC. That'll be in Hershey, Pennsylvania. The information about that is already beginning to trickle out. People can register for it. And as you get a copy of this deck here, each of these links to the event information for each of those events. So I will cover this slide after we get to the other side of the presentations, but know that all of these different working groups that I mentioned and the accelerator have meetings and events where they get together and they work on topics related to their subject area. So again, I'll cover that later on towards the end. Then for the summit in Cambridge, the Emerging Technology and Innovation Summit, just really wanted to give a quick plug for that. It's something that I think would really be of great interest to anybody here that enjoys these topics. So it's a 3-day summit. I went last year. It begins Sunday evening, where you have an opening dinner with networking and several great keynote speakers. The main event with all of the different panels and where you can sort of pick from the potpourri of different topics that are out there is on Monday. And so I've got sort of giving you the lay of the land here. There's 3 tracks this year, one around preparing for the disruption, which is really, how do we do better with the accelerating pace of change. A second track around infrastructure, all of the things, whether they be 5G networks or semiconductors or better cyber that we're going to need to be able to do cyber well, to do emerging technology well. And then thirdly, bringing it all together, integrating the enterprise. How do we bring all this into our enterprise, whether it's state and local or federal? So again, do take a look at that. You'll hear a little bit more about it as well at the April monthly COI meeting. So that being said, I'm going to hand over the mic to Pete and Michael Berkholtz, who will welcome our Smart Cities guests from Coral Gables. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. I'm Mike Berkholtz, so co-chair of the Smart Cities IoT working group that we have here. My day job is I'm a senior technology manager at General Services Administration and ITC, where I lead up our emerging tech efforts there. My co-chair, Pete Tseronis, you guys know from Dots and Bridges, 25-year federal servant, many administrations, many senior leadership positions. I'm going to turn it over to him here in a second to moderate our discussion, but we have 2 guests that I'm really excited to hear from. First, Dan McConnell. He's the chief technologist at Booz Allen Hamilton's Bright Labs up in the DC area, where they do emerging research and development technology. Primarily, he is working on extended reality, digital twins, and metaverse capabilities. Dan's also worked at the Cohen Group and is a former infantry officer in the 10th Mountain Division, and so is just an all-around excited to hear some of the things that they're up to. And then our second person, Raimundo Rodulfo from the city of Coral Gables. He has been with the city of Coral Gables since 2004, done a lot of really cool stuff. Currently the director of innovation and technology and the chief innovation officer, where he has he and the city both have won multiple awards for the work that they've been doing. Prior to coming to Coral Gables, he's had several years in industry in the telecom space, working for major companies and major rollouts of large projects across the country. So I am excited to hear from both of you guys. Pete, I'm going to turn it over to you and get started with our panelists.
I appreciate that. I hope everybody can hear me. And Mike, thank you. It's neat to be introduced. And thank you for not starting with, Pete was the former CTO at the Department of Energy 8 years ago. But no, I had a wonderful 25-year run in government. What an amazing place to work. And with ACT-IAC, when I was in federal, to be in a community like this, a trusted environment where public and private partnership come together today is hopefully indicative of that. And got to give shout outs to Nancy, Rob, Todd, Mike, Sam, Don, Jackie, and everyone else behind the scenes who've helped make this happen. We hope for the next 40 minutes or so, we enlighten, educate, and inform you on, yes, a lot of things: smart cities, IoT, challenges, barriers, opportunities. We're blessed to have Raimundo and Dan here, 2 amazing thought leaders. And while Mike gave a little bit of a background, before I jump into just bragging a little bit about them, I want to remind people that the slide you saw about our working group within the Emerging Tech COI is very focused on infrastructure, critical infrastructure, and how the IoT, the Internet of Things, and the industrial Internet of Things, the IIoT, are helping serve or underpin the anatomy of a smart city and what it takes, because it's people, process, and technology. We hope that you are interested in more of these types of events. We're always looking for amazing speakers who have real life impact outside the Beltway, beyond the regulation. We are a venue where members can hear about the latest. I'm reading a little bit off of our statement here at ACT-IAC, and we always look to help develop resources for adoption. It could be knowledge, it could be a product, and please join us. Today's topic is a very important phrase: enhancing digital equity, collaborative innovation, and economic growth, something that these 2 gentlemen will absolutely address. This is not just about tech, because tech's not the problem. A smart city is the compilation of digitally connected people, information, and urban elements. While the technologies underpin these communities are in a consistent and continuous state of evolution, the objective is to ensure a citizen-oriented approach to city management, expanding community collaboration, embracing diversity and inclusivity, and a lot of other great stuff. We hope to mitigate risk when we build smart cities. We hope to dispel myth when we develop smart cities, and importantly, educate the masses. So with all of that, Raimundo is a colleague and yes, Director of Innovation and Technology, Chief Innovation Officer, City of Coral Gables. Amazing, amazing individual. His roots are in telecom, folks. Read his pedigree online since the 90s. He and I are of the same age, so we remember when there wasn't an internet. He's been with Coral Gables since 2004, and he's giving some great presentations later today. He was just for our ACT-IAC community, hanging out with our good buddy Bill Zielinski recently. He's a Master of Science, a Bachelor of Science, and these are in things at the Florida International University, Electronics and Engineering from National Polytech. He has his background in how this stuff works, and also a Six Sigma black belt. So if those of you who know what that is, that's pretty darn impressive. And equally impressive is my buddy Dan McConnell, Chief Technologist at Booz Allen Hamilton, focused on Bright Labs, which Dan gave a background on to me when we were prepping. And then of course, Mike just now. Dan McConnell served 10 years in the U.S. Army as an infantry officer. Thank you for your service, Dan. Big time. We know you're very passionate about that and those that you protect. He's a Master of Science from University of Virginia, a Master of Public Policy from Harvard, and he's a Bachelor of Science from the United States Military Academy at West Point. So hopefully you know that these folks are the real deal. Let's go right to Raimundo. Raimundo, I opened up with some context. Introduce yourself a little bit, the little professional journey that you're on and why you're so passionate about it. And then Dan, the question will be for you as well.
Thank you, Pete, Mike, and all the community for the opportunity to address this amazing group here. So I'm talking from Connected America conference here in Dallas. So pardon if there's a little bit of noise here. And I started my career, like you mentioned, in the telecommunications industry. So it's great to be here at Connected America because we are connecting the dots, between broadband and quality of life and hope and opportunities for all the community, for everybody. How broadband and this kind of smart city infrastructure and technologies really can power hope and opportunities for everybody, for underserved communities and for the youth and for everybody who wants to find an opportunity to grow and to have a career in this field. So I started 30 years ago with companies like Siemens and Motorola and Bell South. And for 10 years or more, I worked building urban infrastructure at that time and intelligent systems for fault tolerance. So when I joined City of Coral Gables in 2004, my first experience in the public sector, I said, well, maybe I will join for three years. So 3 years became 18 years. An amazing opportunity. City of Coral Gables is in the center of Miami-Dade County. We are the home of the University of Miami. And we have a vibrant community with a lot of challenges because, more than 1 million vehicles commute through Coral Gables every week. So we have a lot of issues related to traffic and also being a coastal community in Florida, we are vulnerable to hurricanes and natural disasters. So all those are challenges. And I brought that experience from the telecommunications industry and that entrepreneurial and competitive mindset also from private sector to building an amazing team. So we have a team of 25 people here in the Innovation and Technology Department. We have engineers in all the disciplines and experts. And we have been working very hard, first of all, to help our city to have a robust infrastructure that can survive hurricanes and can provide critical services for first responders and public safety. And after that, building those intelligent connected infrastructure systems like IoT and digital twins and smart city hub platforms to bring other value now to the stakeholders. So that happened after we took care of the basic needs, building that capacity, infrastructure, cybersecurity that allowed us to grow up to this level.
Raimundo, I just want to highlight for those who heard, amazing story. And I know you're as passionate, not just evangelizing, but explaining, delineating why smart cities are not something just happen overnight. And as I jump over to Dan here, I heard you talk about urban infrastructure, right? Which is critical infrastructure where we live, fault tolerance, addressing natural disasters, man-made, and those that happen. We usually learn a lot about why were we so at risk and we didn't know. And that's where I think in our IT community, from AI to machine learning to the cloud, we want to and have an opportunity to be better prepared. So resilience, I know, is a key word, and we'll get into some of that with your use cases. So thank you. Dan, your turn.
Great. No, thanks, Pete. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here today with everyone. Excited to talk about sort of my past and some of the work that we're working on. I think it relates really well to kind of what Raimundo was walking through, the city of Coral Gables, and what everyone here is interested in. You know, I had an interesting path bringing me here to this career in technology. You know, 20 years ago when I graduated from West Point, we were a country at war, and I was a young infantry officer, and technology was not really my focus. It was more just about service and being in the military, and didn't really think long-term about what I wanted to do. Fast forward about 10 years, and you know, I got into consulting, commercial consulting initially, where I was working with a lot of tech firms within the Beltway, helping them figure out working with the federal government. You know, this is 10 years ago. There was a lot of legislation coming out. And I just, you know, finished a degree in public policy, but was really focused on the technology side and the intersection between tech and government, and really acquisition reform and how we, as a government, are acquiring new and emerging technology. And so as I was helping these tech companies with that, you know, I decided I wanted to be more hands-on. And so that kind of brings me to where I'm at Booz Allen, you know, now. So I started out doing large enterprise modernization, really getting my technical skills up and learning about how this works in the government. But now what I'm working on within the Chief Technology Office is this new organization where we spend a lot of time prototyping with emerging technology. And a lot of it, although, you know, as a smaller, compared to a 30,000 person organization, we're a smaller R&D organization, but we're working really well together. And what resonates with you know, smart cities to me, someone who focuses on DoD primarily as my client base, I hear installation of the future. You know, hundreds of these military bases across the country require the same things that, you know, a smart city like Coral Gables requires. Would love to talk about some more examples about that, but really spend a lot of my time thinking about different emerging technologies such as like IoT, AI, machine learning, digital twin technology, the metaverse, and really how that all comes together and is integrated to provide these services to citizens, users, et cetera.
Well, that's wonderful. And I love the focus on mission, obviously, in your DNA. That's where your career started. And I think a lot of people in the Beltway, where I grew up, so I can say this, and having worked in government, there's a unique mission in every agency and then within each agency. And we all know technologies can solve problems, folks. And for our audience, we know most of you on here too probably work with these companies who could do integration work and provide us and sell into, but it's conversations that matter so that we can enable public safety, right? Or to ensure as best we can, knowing there's always risk. So Dan, I love that. And acquisition reform and R&D organization, I love it because coming from the DOE, that whole, and what all of our infrastructure, you know, is about now, and the laws and legislation, understanding what's written down, but the impact and outcome is what we're here to celebrate today. So Raimundo, let's jump back to you. I mean, let's get right into it. I mean, clearly you're ingesting a lot of technology, and, you know, from digital twins to AI. I'm going to assume everybody on the audience is Googling terminology and knows what some of it means, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about the process of, you know, corralling the right people, making the investment in certain technologies, staying current on things that you buy today and that is outdated tomorrow. I mean, because this journey to make Coral Gables a recognized smart city didn't happen overnight. So tell us a little bit about that challenge, but boy, what an energizing opportunity it's been for the city, because you've clearly been recognized as one in the country that's the best of the best.
Thank you, Pete. So I will go back to 2004. So when I joined the city, I was welcomed by a series of hurricanes. We had a lot of hurricanes, some of them category 1, 2, and 3. And besides the damage that we underwent for the high-speed winds, we lost power throughout the city. We lost all communications at that time. The carriers were not as resilient as they are today to those events. They don't have all the cows and all the infrastructure on hand to survive those kind of events. So we lost all communications, even for first responders, during the worst periods or the worst events of those winds. So coming from the telecommunication industry, to me, that was immediately like a red flag that we had to build that high-speed communication broadband layer that had fault tolerance and resiliency to survive hurricanes. So we started building a multi-layer foundation. Started building our own fiber optics. Where we didn't build, we leased. And we started connecting all our major buildings and fire stations and remote stations and all the community centers with broadband, with fiber. Then we built as a redundancy our own gigabit point-to-point and point-to-multipoint wireless network throughout the city. So we had that redundancy. And we also got the redundancy from the Metropolitan Ethernet, from the PSTN, from AT&T in that case, as a third layer. And on top of that, we had that at that time, we had carriers like Nextel and Bell South, where I came from at that time. And Bell South became part of AT&T later. And later we have other players that came to the picture, but there were not as many as they are today. And remember, we were talking about LTE, early LTE at that time. And the bandwidth was not as robust to connect buildings. So, but that was a layer of connectivity. And on top of that, we built a satellite network also, capacity with rapid deployment kits, because when everything fails, we have satellites. So, and that also was leveraged in some cases. Recently, when we provided mutual aid to the Florida Keys after Hurricane Maria, where they lost everything, our mutual aid firefighters, they came with handhelds with satellite connectivity. And when we deployed our mobile command center to Lee County and Fort Myers after recently Hurricane Ian, we powered it with the SpaceX satellite connectivity from Starlink. So we leveraged satellite as the last resort. So those were the years when we were building that capacity, building a network from scratch. The city didn't have too much of a network at that time. So we built also the human capital, because you need the experts, you need the talent that is going to build, maintain, and operate that infrastructure. And needs to have the expertise and the knowledge and the industry certifications, to be fiber technicians and BICSI certified type of low voltage techs, but also the systems engineers, the electrical engineers, the people that are going to build and put all that together and maintain it, make it sustainable. So those were the years. After pretty much like 10 years, with my focus at that time, once I became the assistant CIO in 2012, it was to build a standardization, leveraging standards from the industry, from ISO 9000. So, you know, I have that had as a PMP and also that had as a Six Sigma black belt. It's about processes. It's about building operational capacity. Thinking as an industrial engineer that you are building a plant with a complex operation. You need to think about the life cycle, but you also need to think on the financial side. How are you going to sustain that from an economic sustainability standpoint? What are the capital plans that are going to also build the budget to for the total cost of ownership of that infrastructure over the years and the operation? So after we work on standardization and we did a Lean Six Sigma process improvement throughout the city to improve the processes before bringing technology. Because if you bring technology to a wasteful process, then you make the process worse. So you make it worse. Basically, it's improving the organization, improving the culture of the organization, improving the processes citywide. Then we brought the technology to it with enterprise systems. We started building IoT networks in 2013. So after we took care of ICT, information and communications technology, then we went to the next phase, ICI, intelligent connected infrastructure. That's where we started building all that foundation, all that layer of smart lights, smart lighting controllers, traffic sensors, environmental sensors, air quality, water quality sensors. Then we started building a community intelligence center where we aggregate all the data from CCTV and license plate readers. And we started seeing the ROI. So like lowering crime more than 40% in just 2 years. Talking about 2015, 2017. Lowering traffic accidents with hyper automation and hyper connectivity of systems, and also data that becomes actionable insight for first responders, for police and fire, for decision makers, for traffic engineers, design safer roads now with all that data and insight that we are bringing to them. So we started building all that infrastructure and connected clouds now that use artificial intelligence and machine learning to make sense of millions of data points. The only way you can process that big data coming from all that cyber physical network of systems. So we process that with AI, and we present that value now to our digital twin and our smart city hub, where it can be consumed, democratized to the citizens, to the public. You go to coragables.com/smartcity, and you see all the open data that we can share from sensors, from systems, all the apps, all the information that can leverage economic growth for businesses or public safety for responders or the public in general. So that's a long story short, but that's the journey so far.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to give you your question after we pivot over to Dan, because Dan, I want to have you riff off like that is a perfect example of a journey that a city said, where do we start? And, you know, Raimundo, from the leadership you need to the trust in folks allowing you to make decisions, building the right team, you know, high-speed broadband, redundancy, resiliency, building from scratch, human capital, loved that. People, process, technology for all our enterprise architects out there. The audience listening, when you market your stuff, say to the government, to the agencies, think about what Raimundo just hit on. Map a capability to a need. And it's not just, I have a solution, I have a box, I have a router, I have a switch, I have a sensor. It's what we're going to get into with Dan here in a minute. So Raimundo, thank you. The question's going to be for you and Dan after this, because I know, you know, we could talk for hours on this. Folks, you can go Google Raimundo's name and Gartner and IEEE and see some great case studies of him talking about the nuts and bolts. So please do that. Dan, you heard this, right? Digital twins, Bright Labs, you all are like to me where the puck's going in addition to kind of where it is. Can you talk about the application though and the promise of these technologies that help maybe accelerate those challenges Raimundo faced 20 years ago?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was like a tremendous breakdown, Raimundo. Really resonated with me. I think, you know, one similar example that, you know, is really close to what I'm working on now on the team. And like you said, digital twins, Pete. So a similar city, another Florida city, just up in the Panhandle, and actually an Air Force base, Tyndall. I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with Tyndall Air Force Base, largely destroyed during Hurricane Michael in 2018. And so there's an example of don't really have a choice, got to start kind of everywhere, and we got to rebuild because it's not just an Air Force base. I mean, it's families live there. It's everything from school, housing, groceries, fire department, local police to the world's most advanced stealth fighter jets, right? And conducting operations. So coming in with a number of partners and a whole host of industry partners, thinking about how do we build, you know, a smart city or an installation of the future. And so taking a lot of those things that Raimundo was working on over years, and we kind of had the ability to start with a clean slate almost. And so where we started with was a digital twin, because once we were able to create a complete one-to-one replica of the physical base, which was not easy, by the way, we could probably talk for hours about meshing together, you know, all the different BIM models, the terrain that we had, and figuring all that out. Once we had that data, really tons of use cases just started popping up, and it just escalated very, very quickly for us. And, you know, we talk about what we work on in Bright Labs in a prototyping kind of organization. When you have a real life digital twin of a whether it's a building or an entire Air Force base, the amount of just like modeling, simulation, experimentation you can do with, you know, digital IoT, with running AI and different models. You know, we're still building this as a large $7 billion, $8 billion over 8 years sort of effort that's being undertook down at Tyndall Air Force Base. But the ability to just kind of do weather studies, do storm surge modeling and sim for over the next several decades, and integrate that into all of the construction. And then Raimundo, you know, you talk about process. We created a 3D real-time integrated master schedule. So no more Excel spreadsheets and just looking at lines, but you can actually experience the construction as it's going up. You can identify dependencies faster. And really, you know, when we get back to the people and process aspect, which I, you know, foot stomp as well, getting all those stakeholders who are critical to get into these large, really expensive infrastructure type efforts to get all their buy-in, and the public, because it's public money, you know, at the end of the day, whether it's a city or the federal government.
So Dan, first of all, audience, please write in questions. If we don't get to them, I'm sure our colleagues, when they're not talking, maybe answer a question, but we're trying to leverage, you know, your attention span, but use the Q&A. Dan, you hit on, I mean, obviously, thank you on digital twins. And folks, Google the term, you probably know what it means, but modeling and simulating stuff that might happen, that technology alone is amazing. Raimundo talks about hurricanes. We see it on the news. Bad stuff happens. What do we learn? But sometimes you can't predict. Some events, the tornadoes that happen instantly, 300 mile an hour, people die. Hurricanes, we may project it for days, weeks, and we're still not prepared because nobody's saying, should the levee be built on mud or should we have had reinforcement? We don't know, and that's where technology is enabling us. So again, technology is not the problem. It can help solve. And I loved the insulation of future phrase. And I loved going back to my man Raimundo, hyperconnectivity and making sense of millions of data points. And additionally, the Intelligent Connected Infrastructure acronym, ICI. I'm going to use that and I will give credit to you, but I love it. That's what this is about. Big picture, it's not easy. Anatomy of a smart city takes a lot. Raimundo, we hear about barriers facing smart cities, IoT. I'm going to throw some terms out, but I want you to riff off some of this, what you find to be critical. And you're talking to people who sell into government, who have products, but also probably could do a better job storytelling and having conversations that matter to understand your specific needs. Data privacy, security, critical infrastructure challenges, citizen engagement. These are considered, key performance indicators. And then governance, once this stuff's all up and running. Go talk to the city of Pittsburgh. You don't just put a sensor on a traffic light and say, we're good. But some of the barriers, security, privacy, interoperability, you hit standardization. What are some of those barriers and things that you fight every day so that you can make sure that it's not a product that's going to fix that issue?
Those are great points. And none of them can be an afterthought. They all have to be part of the ideation process, part of the conceptualization of any new project, of any new service. So we're talking about privacy, security, compliance, accessibility, very important, inclusion, and also all the things that have to do with governance. And to me, something that is very important, interoperability, because you don't want to solve a problem and create 10 new problems. So, and problems can be because we are creating a new silo or a new system or infrastructure that doesn't communicate with the rest of your systems and infrastructure. This is why we have, and if someone wants to read more about our frameworks, you can go to coragables.com/ITDOCS, ITDocs. That's our Smart City Digital Library. There you will see our 8 Smart City Strategic Management Frameworks. And one of those frameworks is the Systems Engineering Interoperability Model. Basically, it's horizontal integration across all functions in the organization in a way that we guarantee that we have that interoperability, that integration, communication between all the systems that we introduce, old and new. For example, asset management, land management, public safety, all those systems need to have interoperability. And they need to have a common ground for governance. They need to follow all the things that have to do with risk management, detection, protection, technology, infrastructure management, and also response management and compliance. We are a highly regulated agency. So we undergo more than 8 audits a year, from PCI to PII to CJI. So if you want to know what those acronyms are, if you work in security and data assurance in government, you know about criminal justice information data, you know about protected health care information data, HIPAA, you know about PCI, you know about all those things that you need to care, and you know about protecting personal identifiable information, the privacy of the citizen. So you have to be the steward, the protector of that privacy of that data. So take that very seriously. That's why we have to have that as part of the ideation process. It has to be embedded in the fabric of the organization. That's why the first thing that we did was to create those 8 interconnected strategic management frameworks that go from infrastructure to project management, to interoperability between systems, to industrial engineering and operation management, and quick wins, very important. Everything we do has to have quick wins, a high ROI that the citizens can touch. So as we have a vision and we go from vision to planning to execution, we also have a strategic realignment. We have to listen to the voice of the customer, the voice of the citizen constantly to adjust those strategies. But as we plan, we execute. So we cannot have analysis paralysis and plan for a long time because things are moving fast. And every technology that we do, every project is a strategic project. It has to align with the needs and priorities of the citizens and also the strategic goals of the organization. That alignment has to happen all the time. With those 8 frameworks, we do it, and that takes care of all those different things that you mentioned, Pete. They are embedded in that fabric.
So Raimundo, and for the audience, again, this isn't easy. I know you get up and eat, sleep, and drink your city. It's not, yes, we are now a smart city. I'm going to take a break and no. it's a constant effort to keep people informed, understanding the value. And you know, I think, Dan, coming to you, there's the excitement and opportunity of what a smart city can be. And we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion. That's the most important. Equity, right? You know, every city, like where I live, I got more shopping mall, Wi-Fi, and access to information than I need. And I still look at charts where you could find there's still no internet access in our nation. And it's not easy to build that infrastructure. Think about our tribal communities in Alaska, for example. It's not easy to cut through ice and to lay wire. That's why we're looking at satellites. Dan, again, riffing off of Raimundo, you know, digital twins, Bright Labs, the information that is being collected. How are you able to distill a lot of that information and help your customers, you know, think about, here's the promise, but there is always going to be risk?
Yep. No, that's a great question. And I agree with everything Raimundo was saying. I think one thing that I think about, you know, especially as it pertains to, you know, the type of digital twins I'm talking about, real-time 3D data, beyond even, and 100% agree on the cybersecurity of all these different types of data types that, you know, we're managing in a city or on a military installation. So even beyond security and data protection, I think of trust, right? And getting the trust of whether I'll use user or citizen, you know, interchangeably, but the real value in these platforms and breaking down these silos, you know, is democratizing the data so that we can find additional use cases. And so, you know, as a, you know, a producer of a digital twin and a smart city or an installation of the future, a lot of the data that I'm gathering or relying on is actually coming from the citizens or the users themselves. And so not only do they trust the data is accurate, do they trust that it'll be valuable for them? Are we providing value, or are we just like wasting time? So really getting back to human-centered design, earning the trust of the end user or the citizen. And I think that increases the fidelity of the ability to the people in the process using it. And then from there, use cases, you know, abound, and people want to come in and leverage the data. I was looking at the Coral Gables, you know, website, and looking at how you could even like the just going around on the street map view and being able to access different types of LiDAR data. Like, you know, a citizen can look at that and think, you know, I might create an app leveraging that data. That could be like a public works app, or, you know, and, you know, you read stories of that happening all over the place. So it's really great to see, you know, I'll say it again, the democratization of the Coral Gables data, because I think that just inherently, you know, adds value as well.
So we've got 6 minutes before I tune off, hand the mic back, and Rob and team do the great stuff. Please, thank you, Rob, by the way, shooting out some links. I'm going to ask Raimundo and Dan, put some hyperlinks out in the chat regarding Bright Labs and, you know, use cases. That's facts tell, stories sell. All right, Raimundo, you know, when I think about what you have on your plate every day and the opportunity, I've heard the word human a lot in our conversation. I love this voice of customer, human-centered design. We use it like it's a phrase, like, yeah, we talk to people. You talked, and Dan, about horizontal communication. So I want people to leave today, and this is my preliminary parting shot. Man, it takes a lot. It takes a village to move the needle incrementally. There is no short, quick fix. We got Dan talking about what Booz Allen's investing in with Bright Labs, like a lot of companies, to, you know, where are we going? How are we going to get there? What are the risks? Raimundo's dealing with, you know, people are saying, not in my backyard. I don't want that RFID sensor. It's going to give me cancer. I mean, not that he said, people said that. I'm just saying I hear this all the time. But there is a trust that needs to be established, whether you're selling something into the government or you're just hoping people believe you understand their plight. So that's my context of what you folks have been talking about for the last, you know, 38 minutes or so. And I appreciate it. And I hope the audience is understanding that, because we are all human beings at the end of the day who have day jobs, whether you sell, whether you ideate, whether you vision. You go home at night and you have some semblance of family, extended or right there, that you care about, and them being safe. So Raimundo, give us that vision of the future. Where do you see your activities going? What do you need from industry? How are you working to collaborate more? And, you know, leave the audience with something that they can, you know, chomp in on or chomp down on it and be excited to reach out to you. And same for you, Dan.
Well, we continue building the capacity to empower the community, especially to solve problems of today. We know about traffic, environment, coastal resiliency for us that live in South Florida, all the things that really matter for the citizens, continue to align with those needs and priorities and critical needs from our community, continue growing our ecosystem where we have from professional organizations like this one, like this great community that I have the privilege to talk to today, with universities, academia, the triple model where we have academia, industry, and government and nonprofit organizations all working together, building an ecosystem with the community to solve the problems of today, but also build the amazing dreams and capacity of the future. So we are building, for example, more smart district fiber corridors to provide digital literacy programs to the community, partner with universities, creating techno parks, upskilling training for digital literacy, to help the businesses also to join the digital economy, to help the young students to get micro-credentials so they can get jobs when they will leverage technologies like AI, IoT. So we are creating those capacities. We are building those training centers. We are connecting the community and we continue growing. So that is the future is bright and we are kind of like paving the way for that.
Well, you're the man. And two things. Good luck with your University of Miami Hurricanes. I forgot to mention that. That's big news down your neck of the woods. And honestly, Raimundo, I get to work with you in the Global Cities Teams Challenge. I am, you know, your passion's infectious and we're birds of a feather. You're the man. I appreciate you being on here. We know you're a busy guy. Keep being the connective tissue officer that you are. All right. Love you like a brother, man. Dan McConnell, give us some parting shots and perspective from today and what you think could be done to enhance that trust with government and industry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I thought this has been a great conversation. I mean, I think there's probably a million things I could say. The primary thing for me, you know, and something that I've been striving to do, you know, inside the Beltway within a large federal contractor is really to, you know, have conversations like this and get outside of our own sort of bubbles, whether it's at the city, state, local, federal level, and really connect with like-minded folks like this. So I spend a lot of time, you know, when I say I'm experimenting and prototyping, it's usually with lots of partners, whether it's like new startups that I'm always like interested in bringing in and exploring different ways we can work together, or other adjacent organizations. You know, I was just thinking, I was just at South by Southwest, and Booz Allen had a huge like activation during that show, if you're familiar, but it's like not a traditional DC show, but we had like a very federal government perspective that I think was interesting for a, you know, a non-traditional show. And so getting out there and talking to people who aren't normally a part of the conversation and being more inclusive of these good ideas and emerging tech will just be helpful for everyone. So would definitely be interested in connecting with any and everyone if you're interested.
Well, we're glad to have you part of this community. Congrats on what Bright Labs is doing and emphasizing that voice, that community, that constant translation that's needed. Okay, so look, I was honored to do this and always am, fired up to have you in this discussion that is relevant today and will be tomorrow. I'm going to pass it back to my good buddy, my other brother from another mother, Mike Berkholtz, and then we'll give it back to Todd and Rob.
Thanks, Pete. I just want to, again, thank Dan and Raimundo for taking the time today to be with us, talk a little bit about what they're up to. You know, certainly in my role, the GSA seeking to build our own capacity and our learning about what others are doing, understanding what the new technologies are coming out, not just, you know, across the commercial spectrum, but also, as Raimundo talked about, what's coming out of the labs, what's coming out of academia. You know, those are the types of things that we're looking at to understand what is coming out there, because, you know, those of you that are on this group know that the acquisition cycle in the federal space is long. And one of the ways to shorten that is for us to catch those particular technologies as they're being developed and start to understand these potential use cases and think about, you know, how we might do that. So, you know, this meeting and others are important for us to get that information. So again, thanks to Dan and Raimundo for their time. And thank you, Pete, as always, for moderating and being the co-chair on the working group.
Well, thank you. And I just saw that, you know, Raimundo's running to another one, but Raimundo, you know, thank you again. Dan, big time thanks. Rob, if I can, before we pass it back, and feel free if you all need to drop off, coming back to what Mike and I do with Don and Sam, is we are always looking for this kind of story. We can quote, we can reference, we can put a white paper together and pray that people even read it, much less the first page. but these are the stories. These are hearing it from Raimundo and Dan, who are industry and government at various levels. And there's a greater good here, right? The federal government can do only so much. And you're selling not into an agency audience. You're selling to those that the agency serves. And we have 420 some agencies with a unique mission. And each of us goes home at night hoping our water's clean, our air's clean, our lights turn on, the food we eat is safe. There's no quick fix. So with that, thank you to all of you. And until the next time, and engage with our group. We'd love to have the ideation sessions. Back to you, Rob and Todd.
Thanks, Raimundo. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Pete and Mike. Really great discussion on smart cities there. As you, I think, so eloquently was pointed out during the discussion, smart cities is interesting in that there's this foundational element of IoT and networks and all that you need fundamentally at a baseline level. But then on the other end of it, bringing it all together, you get all the data that come together, you have AI, you have other types of analytics capabilities that you need to bring together and make everything connect so that it can fundamentally, as Pete said, better serve the public. So end to end. That being said, that's one type of challenge. And that's the segue into the next piece. And I'm going to share my screen here real quick. We have an emerging technology accelerator within the COI, as I had pointed out at the opening of our session today. And I'm going to hand over the microphone to Cindy Good, who is a part of the Emerging Technology Accelerator. She's from the Department of Treasury. And there is a tech challenge that is currently being planned, and she'd like to give you guys some more information about that. Cindy?
Good afternoon, everyone. Cindy Good. I am the Director of the Office of Financial Innovation and Transformation at Department of Treasury's Bureau of Fiscal Service. And thank you for having me. This tech challenge, I will say, is one of which we are working together both with industry and government to kind of bring together. It really stemmed from hosting several innovative engagements in partnership with the acquisition community of interest, all with the purpose of seeing how we can make acquisitions better. And I'll talk a little bit about what we've done in the past. So in 2020, we put together a Shark Tank to identify how emerging technologies can help streamline the acquisition lifecycle. There, we learned about machine learning and how it can flag potential instances of fraud, waste, and abuse in contracting. We also learned about the use of intelligent automation for automating contract modifications. In 2022, we then held an ideation event to hear from the acquisition professionals themselves on the challenges that they face throughout the acquisition lifecycle. In that particular engagement, we then prioritized 3 themes around processes, policy requirements, and automation, of which we are still working together to identify potential solutions. What we want to do now is we want to continue the momentum of all of the information that we've gathered and truly build out a collaborative innovation ecosystem, and co-creating this with the representation of stakeholders from federal agencies, both big, small, medium, defense and civilian, from industry, both large and small, also with a very specific emphasis on small businesses and non-traditional organizations, as we are understanding that there are many barriers to entry for them, and academia. And so what we're hoping with this particular tech challenge is that the challenge itself and the activities leading up to it can bring awareness and understanding of the acquisition ecosystem, particularly on how to streamline the identification and adoption of emerging tech. We hope that the challenge itself can be an opportunity where every agency gets the value and not just one agency can get it, but it would be an opportunity where we all have the opportunity to actually capitalize on the lessons learned, on the artifacts, and on the solutions that are brought forth from that. And then we also hope that we can also increase the visibility of what those outcomes are so that the ecosystem can then take advantage of them. The tech challenge, actually, Rob, if you go to the previous slide. What you see here, the tech challenge has consisted of a gap analysis, and what's happening right now is it's being followed by a series of roundtables. We just conducted the small business roundtable yesterday. The incubator and the government roundtable are occurring in mid-April. And the idea there is all of the conversations, all of the feedback, all of the insights that we gather would then lead to a problem statement of which we can then move forward to the challenge itself of developing a proof of concept in collaboration with partnerships of small businesses, with industry, in addition to academia as well. The outcome will then be a series of things, a white paper, as we work with the Innovation Institute or other entities, potential funding for piloting efforts. And the idea there is that we can truly create a solution of which all of governments can use and an opportunity of which government, industry, and academia can then leverage and take off themselves. So next slide. Jackie, I'm going to quickly pause. Jackie French. She is also supporting this and co-leading this potential initiative. And I wanted to pause to see if you had any additional comments.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm not able to join via video camera today, so my apologies to everyone. Wish I could be here and show my friendly face. Cindy, I think that was a fantastic overview. There's really, you really covered everything. The only thing that I'll just mention is we are looking for feedback on this peer and gap analysis. So for folks who are interested, I can drop our overarching email into the chat so that if you would like to provide feedback for the peer analysis or the gap analysis, we want to make sure we have good representation there in terms of how this data and information is going to inform the tech challenge. The really important thing here is we're going to ensure that feedback from the small business and non-traditional organization community is incorporated along with the incubators. And the incubators include governmental and non-governmental. So we really have a lot of diverse stakeholders at the table. And we will be socializing the government acquisition life cycle and procurement processes and procedures with these communities, especially those outside the Beltway. So we're looking for that feedback. I know there's a few folks here today who work on the commercial side, so we would love to hear from you. And when we get to the government roundtable later in mid-April, we will be sharing that feedback with the government agencies. We're focused on cabinet level agencies. So we're hoping to get feedback over the next 1 to 2 weeks. So I will drop the email in the chat, and if it is of interest, please feel free to reach out.
And so what you're seeing here on this particular slide is just a list of upcoming activities, of which I explained previously. We're currently under the roundtable session, followed by then the challenge itself, and then some artifacts leading to that. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Jackie. So for folks that are interested, please look out for that email. And I think Jackie may have just posted it in the chat to get more information. So good stuff. So next we wanted to talk about just some of our COI updates. So as I had mentioned at the opening, every time we do one of these overarching COI meetings, we typically hand it over to one of those working groups that I had mentioned earlier. Today, that was Smart Cities and IoT. So Pete and Mike lead that up and led that main event discussion that we had today. Next month, though, we're going to be handing things over to the AI working group. So Keith Bossian and David Hook will be leading us through the main event in April. It'll be April 18th. It's typically from 10 o'clock to 11:30. So this month there was a conflict, so we scheduled it at a different time. But be on the lookout for more information about that. You're going to hear about what that working group is doing, some of the publications that they've been putting forward, and some of the things that they're thinking about doing in the upcoming year, as well as some opportunities that the members of that AI working group might have to engage with some of the governance constructs that are out there in the public sector. So as you can see, that one, I guess the fifth bullet there, the responsible AI official council collaboration. So if AI is something of interest to you, please join. And then as well, next month, we're also going to have a discussion among several folks that are starting up a futurist group. So within the COI, not only do we have these working groups around blockchain and quantum and AI, as well as the emerging technology accelerator that we just heard from Jackie and Cindy about, But we also have some folks that are starting up a futurist group that will be intending to take a look at the accelerating pace of change and how the public sector is going and its partners are going to be able to keep up with that. And that's everything from deploying the technologies to understanding how those new technologies interrelate with legacy to the workforce and people aspects of it, to procurement and funding. And just how in a world where things are moving faster and faster, how can we help the public sector, the agencies and its vendor partners do a better job with continuing to modernize. So Todd, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add in terms of things that people might want to be on the lookout for next month or generally speaking.
Well, we've got the next slide, Rob, if you want to advance to it, we can show all the things that are going on across the working groups. And in addition to that, like you mentioned, we're going to be having the Emerging Tech and Innovation Conference coming up in May 7th through the 9th in Cambridge. We're also, as noted here, that futurist group that was going to be maybe featured a little bit in next month's meeting is also kicking off with their own cadence, much like the other working groups are doing here too. So, and then we've got beyond that, we've got some other programs coming up following, I think, in June.
Definitely. So for those that are new here, if any of this interests you and there's a particular niche that you're interested in, please, by all means, find a way to engage in one of our working groups or with the accelerator. Come see everybody at the conference. It's not just a great place to learn about these technologies. It's also a great place to connect with people. So we dropped an email address there at the bottom of the slide where you can get more information about any of this stuff. And also know that the next meeting among our constituent groups is tomorrow. So it's the Emerging Technology Accelerator. We'll be meeting tomorrow. Jackie will be leading a discussion on civic technology, applying emerging technology towards the public interest. So I believe OPM and, if I'm not mistaken, Oracle were planning to be there. Oh no, actually it's Google. OPM and Google are planning to be there to talk about implementing emerging technology from a civic technology perspective. So that being said, the next thing that we want to do is just give an overview of and have a chance for any of the working group leads that are with us to chime in on any updates that they might have. So we'll start first if we have either David Hook or Keith, if there's anything that you wanted to update on with respect to AI. And if not, here's a quick overview for those that aren't as familiar with that working group in terms of what they're doing.
All right, I believe,
yeah. All right,
Keith had to drop off a little bit early. So yeah, we've had, a great round of speakers. One of the things we're really excited about that we're working on right now is a charter for our working group that's going to kind of really align our activities with our strategic goals and with the strategic aim of the COI. We're socializing that this week via email, and then we're actually having open forum this Friday for amendments, and then we're going to send it forward for ratification. So that's one of the things that we're really excited to be participating in. Obviously, the 13960 related papers, we're currently revising the primer, which was released about 3 years ago. So we've got a working group that's rapidly moving towards bringing that up to speed. As everyone, I think, is aware, artificial intelligence has been moving at a pace that has been hard to keep up with. So we want to make sure that we are arming, our industry and federal people with the most recent information and keeping them up to speed. So I've got a little bit of a cold today, so I think I'm going to just keep it short for now.
Thanks, David. Perfect. All right. Hope you're feeling better. So the next working group, I don't think I saw Josh on the line, but if Josh or Fred, if you're here, we also have a blockchain working group. They meet every Friday at 10 o'clock. They themselves as well have done a playbook and a primer over the years and have a number of initiatives. So
yeah, it's Fred
is out there.
Yeah, not more than what's written here. I mean, so we meet every Friday. We try to have folks who have been or are doing projects, blockchain related projects with the government, or have like cool ideas and stuff to come and present to us, so that we can share the knowledge and see how we can move forward with this technology. Thanks.
Thanks, Fred. So, and I know Fred is one of the organizers for a panel next month that will be speaking, or actually in May, that will be speaking to blockchain at the May conference in Cambridge. So, all right, next, DevOps. I don't know if David is on the line, David Hernandez, but know that they meet the third Monday of every month, and they're working on a paper related to the organizational impediments to implementing DevOps. So if this is something that interests you, feel free to reach out to David or that email address that was posted earlier, and we'll help you get connected to that meeting. Next meeting, April 17th. Okay. And we just heard from Pete on IoT and smart infrastructure. Lots of good stuff going on there. Pete, unless there's something that you wanted to add, I'll move on to the next one. I feel like you probably had a chance to chime in on the things that your great group is doing. So I will advance to quantum. So we also recently stood up a quantum knowledge group. So Tim Gilday runs that along with Sabina Sokol. And so that's a group that meets the fourth Friday of every month. I don't know if we have any folks here from that group. I think Tim may be on travel this week, but this is really an interesting one because it's a brand new group. So it's a chance to get in on the ground floor of some of the work that they're doing. And I know they're already taking a look at reviewing some white papers that are being developed by federal agencies to provide feedback to them. So this is a good opportunity to understand where that's going and get involved there. Next meeting, April 28th. And then we heard from Jackie and Cindy earlier about the accelerator. Jackie, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to chime in about, maybe about tomorrow's meeting or any other activities of the accelerator that might be worth mentioning, but this is a chance to do that.
Absolutely. So this slide is outdated and that is on me to update that next time. Thank you, Todd and Rob, for including us. One thing I will mention is we are looking for subject matter experts in literacy programs. Ideally, if they have experience with emerging technologies, that's great, but we're really casting the net wide. The team is in the process of developing a white paper, which they're hoping to have completed over the next month or so. And so we are at the point now where we're pulling in SMEs. So if you or someone you know is interested in providing feedback on the paper or joining the working sessions, please reach out to the emerging technology COI@gmail.com, and we can put you in touch with the lead there, who is Amora Upton with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And so we're looking for subject matter experts there. And then with the tech challenge, as Cindy mentioned, we have a white paper coming out soon that will cover, provide a full overview of what the challenge is. Government and universities and industry will all have the opportunity to participate. So we want to make sure we get that information out to as many people as possible. So be on the lookout for that white paper. And if any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the Gmail provided.
Thanks, Jackie. And please join them tomorrow afternoon if you're interested in civic tech and emerging technology. All right, and just a reminder, next month, same relative time and channel. We'll be here to hear from the AI folks and the emerging futurists group that is being established. And that's all that we had for today. Unless there's any questions, we can reclaim the time. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month. Take care.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.